Welcome back to another episode of This is Built Different podcast. Today's guest is a author, a speaker, and we're going to learn a lot about her business. She also has history and work experience with one of your favorite hotels, that's the Marriott. But instead of talking about that, we're going to learn about her journey into entrepreneurship. Cassandra Crowley Mayo, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing great, Quintel. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Sure. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking time to get to know me and to get to know about the platform. And we started out
Yeah,
talking about, what it is that I'm trying to do and what it is that you're trying to do and what we do with the
right,
built different platform. So I think that those are the kind of conversations that I like to have with other entrepreneurs and founders, right? Where we work together well, where things can be a win-win. So you being on the platform today is going to help our female listenership and how they can maximize their potential. And when I went through your Instagram and I saw how long you've been doing podcasts and how long you've been talking and sharing this kind of information, I felt like you would be a great fit to share. So I would like for
thank
you to
you.
tell us your origin. Sure. I would like for you to tell us your origin into like your professional experience and
Okay,
then how you pivoted into your business.
okay. Uh, I always like to say that I grew up at the, so they say, the end of the civil rights movement, and I
Hmm.
always say so they say because of what I experienced in growing up. For example, I was voluntold by my mother that I was going to go to school with her before they started integrating schools. So my mom taught in an all white school from first through sixth grade. And when she was asked to do what I call a project, and she told me that I was going with her, and I uh I rebelled a bit because I didn't want to go there, plus it was far away from home. And well, of course, because I was voluntold, I did go. And it was great to have that experience. But once I was done, I made a decision that I wanted to go to an HBCU school. And I just, wanted to see more of what that was like, although I lived in an all black community. And I went to Morgan State University, and I felt extremely comfortable there because there were people that looked like me, um, talked like me. We had a lot of the same backgrounds, so that made me feel good. And I also was glad that I had the experience in an all white school so I could see the difference. So going there, I took full advantage of a placement office at Morgan because, to quite frankly, I had no idea what it was that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go to college. I also knew that once I graduated, I definitely wanted a job and I wanted to live on my own. I didn't want to live in where I was from. And I also tell you that I was an only child, grew up with both parents and enjoyed it, took advantage of the job placement office, career placement office, and I got a job with Chrysler. But the whole thing with that opportunity was I had to relocate. I had to relocate from Newport News, Virginia to Birmingham, Alabama. And just doing that was very interesting because of what I saw, what I heard, the water hose, the racism, and I'm going to Birmingham. So when I did go there, I was a little fearful because of what I saw. But yet I was hired, and I was hired to be the first African American female in that space. And so after that, I continued to be hired as the first African American female in a lot of leadership roles. So I
So
just
thank you for
say
that.
that, yeah, so people kind of understand the lenses that I started wearing as a result of the experiences that I had.
Mhm. So can you tell us about the role at Chrysler? What did you do there?
Chrysler, I was a branch manager trainee in their finance department.
Okay.
So I was one that, collecting payments, repossessing cars and all of that kind of stuff. But I got laid off at that early years. I was laid off from that, and then from there, I started working for a company called what was it called then? I think it was called Saga. It was a contracted food service, housekeeping, and engineering company where we provided services in schools and hospitals and hotels and of that nature.
Interesting. Did you know those types of companies existed? Because I didn't know that that was such a big industry, like doing hospitality and providing food service for other, like, I guess, larger entities.
Yeah. No, I wasn't aware. As I indicated, I would say I was just naive because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And, when you go to college, for me, a lot of my friends knew. Somebody wanted to be a doctor, somebody wanted to be a teacher. And I was like, wow. And I felt like a misfit because I felt I should know, and I didn't. So what happened was I just my relationship that I had with God, even then, because I grew up going to church because my grandfather was a Baptist minister. And I just said, okay, I just pray and ask God to lead and guide me. So no, I had no clue what that type of industry.
He led you in the right direction, and then um, so fast forward now up until when you started your own business. So what was the transition from the workforce to entrepreneurship for you?
Yeah, I never ever wanted to be an entrepreneur, which is ironic to me. I always liked going to a company, a job, and get my paycheck every 2 weeks. I I was secure in that. And individuals would say, I think you should do this and you should have your own company, but I never wanted my own company. What I do know, what I always wanted to do was write a book. That was in my mind. And I also set goals. And one of my goals was to retire at 55. That was a goal of mine. And now, and a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I can't wait to retire. But then when you retire, what do you do? You know? And when I was able to do that, I was like, now what? Um, and then I had this book that I wanted to write, and I've been wanting to write it for like 15 years. And I kept saying, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to write this book, and never did. I even told friends so they could hold me accountable. And they were like, well, what's going on with the book? I'm like, it's coming, it's coming. And then for years, it kept gnawing at me, like, you need to write this book. And it was really getting on my nerves. So during COVID, I wrote the book.
Good
And when I
time.
wrote the book, I was grateful that I wrote the book, and I said, "Oh, okay, that's it. Thank you." And then something said, when much is given, much is required. You can't write a book like this and don't incorporate it, tell the story, help other people. So once that happened, that's when I'm like, well, I guess I have to have my own business now, reluctantly, but I was being obedient to what I kept hearing. So that was the precipice for me starting my own company.
Nice, nice. So, I just told you I really like the name of your book. So, can you tell us the name of your book and what it's about?
Yeah, the name of it Is Your Way in Your Way? It's actually a self-discovery guide for women on how to restore yourself, learn from your experiences, and be your true self again. And I wrote that book, or I got the title from an incident that occurred at an airport because during my history, I traveled like 80 to 90% of the time, flying. I did drive, but I flew a majority of the time. And something happened in the airport one evening, and that's where the title came. And because we don't have time to talk about what happened, the chapter in the book is titled um, My Out of Body Experience. And I had an out of body experience, and I wrote where it came from, what happened, and that's how the title came about. Is Your Way in Your Way?
Got you, got you. Yeah, and I had a feeling that it came from some real life thing, either like a conversation or something, because it just the way it flows just makes so much sense. Like, is your way, in your way. So when that happened, the did you find self-discovery, or was it just a way for you to kind of connect it to like a real life experience?
Yeah. All my life I've been discovering, you know, uh, life um, life is interesting, and there were times when I thought life should be easy.
Mhm.
Of course, I had a rude awakening as I went through my life. And I also realized because of my background and my experiences, this book was going to women, and they were love letters written to women of things that they women go through. And based on my experience, men go through a lot of the same things. And I've been asked numerous times, why didn't you spread it out to both genders? And I said, because I'm a woman and I know more about women than I do men, so to speak. And because of the love letter concept, it's a non judgmental caring book. And what I wanted individuals to get from that is we all have dreams, aspirations. We all want to do this. Some want to open a business, some want to write a book, some want to open up a daycare. It's just a lot of things, but they don't get to do it. And why? Because they're in their way. More than likely, it's something about them that's in their way, preventing them from doing what it is that they've been called to do. And I also know when you're doing what your meaning and your purpose, you have you start appreciating and getting a better understanding of why we even exist.
Mm.
So that's why uh I wrote the book.
Got you, got you. So it feels like before I even dive into the book, it sounds like when you do more self-discovery, you learn more about how you connect with other people. Is that something that you've been seeing with people who read and benefit from the book?
Yeah, and the self-discovery was, your childhood has a lot to do with your adulthood.
Hmm.
And, and not only that is there's certain things that happen during our childhood that we do now in our adulthood. And one of the examples I will share is my mother was a very critical person. And not that she didn't love me, she loved me dearly, both my parents. But it was like, well, what? It was always like, well, why do you look like that? Why would you say that? That's not the proper English. Why do you dress like that? Why do you? And it got to a point where, okay, I wanted to please her. So it was like eggshell sometimes going to her because of what she would say to me. And as a result of that, I realized as I got older in the corporate world, I lost my voice. And we don't want to lose our voice. And I was trying to figure out why it's that. Why am I sitting back listening? Why don't I speak up? And once I realized that, that awareness was healing. It was freedom. And then I got it. And then I started speaking up. But it took some time because that concerned me that I wouldn't speak up.
Got you, got you. Um, and I know that along with the book, you have like a companion journal, and in that journal, are there processes for people who read the book to learn how to go through self-discovery the way you just described for yourself?
Exactly. It corresponds with the chapters in my book.
Okay.
And as you go through the journal, you will be surprised of the things that will come up in regards to your life, like how you grew up and, if you could change anything in your childhood, what would it be? And it's kind of like self-imposed barriers that you will find like, oh, okay, why I don't have self-confidence, uh, why I'm having challenges with relationships, why I am attracting the same kind of men or same kind of women, so all of that stuff will come up. And I even have a chapter and about whoever questioned whether there was a God. And that was a chapter that I was like, I knew that there were times in my life when things got so rough. I'm like, it can't possibly be a God. Now, why in the world would you let this stuff happen to me? Why do bad people seem to get away with stuff and good people, I was just having all of this dialogue. And I know you may not or your listeners may not have ever questioned, but somebody's questioned it before, asked the question, is there really a God? Like, what is all of this about? So I
Hmm.
just capture things in this book that I believe individuals have dealt with or dealing with or want answers to.
Got you, got you. So I know you work with women and helping them and helping empower women and help them reach their fullest potential. What are some of the challenges you see that kind of some of the most common things? Everybody's life is different, but what are some of the recurring things you're seeing with
Yeah.
different people you work with?
Well, yeah, one of the questions that I've asked people, if I provided you a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, and I ask you, where are you in living your best life on your terms? Where would you score yourself on that scale? A lot of people aren't transparent. A lot of people don't even have a clue what their best life looks like or either what the best life is. And it's actually how you maximize. It's a way of how do you maximize your personal happiness, your transparency, your authenticity, you know, and people, and some people say, well, if I had a lot of money, I'm like, okay, all right, are you sure? It's just like Elon Musk said the other day, money not making him happy. People had pause, like, really? You're the richest man in the world. It's not about that. And people, I like for them to kind of think about, because what I don't want, and so many people do, they die with regrets.
Yes.
And I know that based on a study that this hospice nurse did with individuals transitioning and asked them, did they have any regrets? And if they did, what were they? And there were five. Three, I'm like, okay, wish I didn't work so hard, wish I traveled, wish I spent time with family. The other two bothered me. One was I wish I could have been more happier, and I wish I could have been more true to myself. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to live this life with regrets. When it's time for me to go, I want my cup running over. And that's something that I want for everybody, every human, if they can do that. And that's why it's time to think about, to me, are you living your best life on your terms?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story because I've read that too about the study they did for hospice and those five regrets. And I think about that. I think about that for myself. And luckily, when I was younger, probably in my late 20s or so, I read the book The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Have you ever heard of that book? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really popular, but it did help me figure out that scale. Like, what does my best life look like? Like, what was I optimizing for? And I really realized, like, this is what means the most to me. I grew up an only child too. So
Mhm.
I like to have my freedom and I like to have control over my time and my opportunities. And so that was
Right.
always what I was working for. Like, money is a tool to get that. So yeah, you need it. But I think that I'm always gonna be winning if I can control like what I get to
Right.
do, what I get to work on. So you sharing
Mhm.
that is good because everybody should think in those terms. And if money is the thing, okay, but you still got to know, like, are you doing the right thing
Yeah.
so that it's working?
Exactly.
If that it's working for your life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's really interesting. So let's talk about the business part. Like you were a reluctant entrepreneur, solopreneur, and you're taking everything in your own hands now. How do you go about like growing your business now? I know you have a podcast, so you share a lot of information, and you have the book, so that's out there spreading the word. But how else do you maybe get people that you coach and consult and work with?
I get individuals for my speaking. I
Okay.
also, just the things I put out on social media, the connections, and how important it is for you to have relationships, how important it is for you to network. It's funny, like when you network, the first thing people say, so what do you do? I'm like, and people associate it with their jobs. Oh, I'm a vice president of blah 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 blah. Who? Okay, well, who? Okay, I always say that I get paid to empower women to achieve living their full potential. And in order to, if that's what they want, and a lot of times, like my signature program is called the Rise Journey. My icon is the phoenix bird. And my framework, so to speak, is titled Rise Beyond Limits, and that's an acronym that I use, and it's a 6 month program. I also have one on one coaching, I have group training, I do corporate training. And based on the audience and the audience, the like the what the company is trying to do, because even you can be living your best life in the work you do, but there's something like, so okay, you're doing this job, so what do you want to do next? Well, so I help people figure it out, get it out. you know um we don't want to just live this life, and then, in other words, we don't want to go through the motions. A lot of us just
Yes.
go through the motions. So when I speak and have my snippets online, my TikToks and all of that, there are people that say, I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to do that. And so that's basically church groups, just different organizations, corporations. I do training. I'm connected with event planners and things of that nature. So that's how I get my business.
It's really smart to work with event planners, right? Because they're kind of working on the other side. They have like professional organizations, right? That they have to plan the events for, and then they find you and say, "Hey, we have somebody who can be here." And I never thought about that, but that's really cool. I really like that.
Yeah.
That's a,
Hmm.
that's a, that's an actual way to network. Now,
Right.
since you mentioned that, I had a previous guest named Catherine, and she has a networking group. So she talks about some of the errors that people have with network and how it can be not fake, but very superficial. Are there any
Right.
kind of insights you've had because you kind of organically started building your business like through a network? Are there any kind of tips you can give us on how to go about doing that?
Things I always talk about is transparency, authentication.
Hmm.
Um, there are for me, I have what I call a discerning spirit. I can tell whether a person's being real. It's very, very interesting. Um, and rather than going to people and say, "Hey, how you doing today? How are you?" "I'm doing fine." Why not come with a question? "Hey, tell me, what is it that you like about your job?" Get engage people. Don't just, that's superficial. How you doing? "I'm good." And then you move on. You ask those probing questions. Like, what is it that you like about your job that today? Hey, I'm curious based on what you do. And there's some people I didn't even know people did the things they do, because somewhat I've always been in the hospitality industry. So I will say, hey, if this was your own company, what would you do differently? And I asked, and there are people that says, "Cassandra, I want to invite you to this event, but you ask so many questions." And I'm like, that's how I learn. I mean, I'm curious and I'm genuine. I learn from, it's like a kid in a candy store, and then I continue to get educated. I like learning. I like growing. If I'm not growing, I'm dying. Um, so I engage with people. And another thing, Quintel, that's important, I spoke to a guy the other day. He said, "My thing is I don't follow through. Everybody's so busy." And I'm like, okay. Well, I'm like, well, don't give me your business card, because I'm not going to do anything. We don't do business cards anymore. And I said, well, so I get to know people. I understand the dynamics of relationship building. Um, what are some of the things you hear people say? It's like I was talking to a woman the other day, and she was telling me that the unemployment for African American females has risen from 6% to 36%. And I was like, you have to be kidding me. I had no clue. And I just happened to be reading an article, and I sent it to her. And she was like, "Oh, thank you so much." So I listen to what people are saying, and then from there I can follow up, because if I know your birthday, know your kids, know what you want, know what your desires are, I'll remember that. And that's kind of why I say I have friends in every state, because I travel to every state. So it's just certain people that I know and just stay in touch with.
That article that you sent, was that around employment, like opportunities for her, or just more about your conversation?
It was more about the conversation she had with me, that it was hard for her to find a job, and how more African American females are unemployed than ever before. And when I read that article, I was just, oh my gosh, she was, not that I didn't believe her, but this was just that statistics, where they got the information from, just so she'll know. And also, it created an opportunity for her to maybe start her own business.
Yeah, yeah, I think that
Yeah.
that's a good option for many people. Do you have
Mhm.
any advice, like now that you've been through the professional ranks in the corporate world and now being a solopreneur and calling your own shots, do you have any advice for women who may be listening or watching?
Say, networking is so critical, because a lot of jobs that I've had are because of people who knew me. Then you had to show up once you got the job. And I've had individuals that have asked me to help them, get a job, or did I know somebody? And I do know somebody, but depending on that person, I would refer them, because you're jeopardizing my name. They're individuals that I know that half the time they're late. They're not a person of their word. And I have high expectations, and maybe they say because I'm from the old school, it's just certain things that I expect. Um, but I would say, and even LinkedIn is good, to see what's going on there. And but those connections are critical, and a lot of people don't really engage with other people, just their circle. And
Yes,
yeah, and another thing I would advise is have a board of directors, a personal board of directors. Companies have board of directors. Have somebody in your circle that knows more than you about many things. Like I have an attorney in my circle. I got a financial advisor. I have a friend who keeps it real. I have a spiritual buddy that if I need something, I'm having some trouble, I know that she's gonna go to the word. I'm like, okay, let me call her. And I just have a circle in my I call it my personal board of directors, and I think that's important. And also be careful who you associate with, who you hang around. They can be a good influence or a bad influence.
yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that about the having the board and also with who you hang around. Like we always say, or we hear often, how you are the sum of the people, the five people you hang around with the most, or spend the most time with. But it was a study that I heard about recently, uh, where if you're friends with somebody else who's friends with a person that's obese, it increases your chances of becoming obese. And I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
that lends itself or maps over to like other not so good characteristics. And people would say that you might be like stuck up or something like that, but you really have to be cautious about what you tolerate from the people you spend the most time with. You can't police everybody all the time, but
Right.
I agree with you. You definitely want to be mindful of that, especially if you're
Yeah.
going through tough times. Like if anybody is going through unemployment or having a tough time finding a
Mhm.
job right now, um,
Mhm.
you got to be able to watch for that. So as we wind down here, um, I would like for you to share with us, not where we can find it. I don't want to talk about that yet, but I want you to share with us one more takeaway from the book. So the book is called "Is Your Way in Your Way?"
In your way. Mhm.
Yeah, and
Mhm. Mhm.
the companion journal is not. Most people don't make that smart move, right? To apply to have a journal to go along with the book, especially a book about yourself. It seems like such an easy thing,
Mhm.
but I think it's smart that you did that. Can you share one more thing from the book so they can get a even better insight into what it's like to talk with you?
Beginning of the book, I quote a poem called The Dash, and you may have heard of that, and your audience may have heard of it. Um, and a lot of people will read that at funerals, which I found interesting. But it's kind of like, okay, you were born in 1975, you may live to 20 something. Look at your dash, look in the middle. what is going on in the middle? Because, it's and when people pass, and one of the things I say is give me my flowers now. Don't wait till I'm gone. Let me know, appreciate whatever, because I want to leave a legacy. And that's kind of in the beginning, I kind of talk about what are you doing now? If you had to start your life over today, what would you do differently? What's in between the beginning and the end? What difference, what impact are you making? And I guarantee that you will feel better about life, yourself. Not that you won't have bad days. I mean, you're going to have them, but you'll have a purposeful wanting to get up in the morning like, okay, I'm going to do this. That's all what I call meaning and purpose in your life.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think that that is a good driving mechanism. It seems kind of morbid sometimes, but it's very true if you think about what you're doing in that dash, because eventually, it's going to come to a period, right? So,
Right.
yeah. So, share with us where you would like people to contact you if any women want to work with you. How would you like them to reach you? Where can they find you online?
Sure. They can go on my website, CassandraCrawley.com. If they'd like to, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X. They can also, if they would like to DM me, they can. If they want to email me, it's Mayo, Mayo, at CassandraCrawley.com.
Okay, great. So I'll add all the links in the description so they can easily find you, get to your website, get to all of your socials, and
Thank you.
engage with you and talk with you about you, your
Okay.
book, and all of your coaching, your one-on-one. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here on this episode with us here at Built Different.
Thanks for having me, Quintel. It was a joy. I appreciate it.